The clerk heard footsteps in the stockroom, even though it was locked. The bell above the door jingled faintly, though I was the only one in the store. It was past midnight, the usual stretch of quiet hours when the hum of the fluorescent lights and the soft whir of the refrigeration units were the only company. I'd been on my feet for nearly 8 hours, stocking shelves and wiping counters, trying to keep the space orderly while the town slept. I was arranging cans of soup in the back aisle when I heard it. A soft thump, then another. Footsteps. In the stockroom. I froze. The stockroom door was locked. I checked it twice before closing the main entrance. The key was in my pocket. Must be something loose, I whispered to myself. Boxes shifting. Floor creaking. But the rhythm of the steps was wrong. Too deliberate. Too measured. A slow shuffle, then pause, then another step. And it wasn't moving randomly. It was pacing like someone, or something, was walking deliberately across the back of the stockroom. I set the cans down and listened, heart thumping. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, but the pitch seemed to bend slightly near the door, warping the air around it. My hand drifted toward the door handle, but I hesitated. Something inside told me I shouldn't open it. The steps stopped. For a moment, the store was silent, perfectly still except for my own breathing and the soft buzz of the lights. Then came a knock. One soft, deliberate rap against the door. I jumped back, knocking over a stack of paper towels. The echo of the crash seemed to shake the quiet, and I felt my stomach tighten. I'm imagining this, I muttered. I'm exhausted. I forced myself forward, hand on the doorknob. The wood felt cold beneath my fingers. I tried to rationalize. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe I'd left the door unlocked after all. But no. I remembered locking it carefully, deliberately. Another knock. This one louder. Then another. I yanked the door open. The stockroom was empty. Shelves lined with boxes, nothing amiss. The fluorescent bulb flickered overhead, casting long, jittery shadows across the linoleum. I stepped inside slowly, scanning the rows of products. Soda, chips, cleaning supplies, dry goods. Nothing moved. Nothing had been disturbed. Yet I could still hear it. Soft, shuffling footsteps circling, whispering, too faint to make out words. I spun, heart pounding, flashlight sweeping across the shelves. Every shadow stretched unnaturally. Every box seemed to lean slightly toward me. I whispered into the darkness, "Hello!" My voice sounded strange, hollow, echoing back in a way it shouldn't have. The footsteps paused. A whisper, almost a hiss. My own name, maybe, or some syllables that made no sense. I tried to shake it off. Fatigue, imagination. But I had been here before. In this aisle. I remembered it. Or did I? My mind felt slippery. I doubted the very order of things. Then the air shifted. A cold rush from the far corner of the stockroom, where the lights barely reached. The shadow there was too dark, too solid. I could feel it leaning, observing. Something moved, not fully into the light, just enough to suggest it was there, crouched among the boxes. I backed toward the door. My hands shook. The door handle rattled in my grip. Another knock, this time internal against the walls themselves. Or was it coming from behind me? I could no longer tell. Then a series of knocks in rapid succession, moving along the shelves like fingers drumming. I lunged for the door. It didn't budge. My hand slipped, brushing the cold metal of the lock. I twisted it. Locked, unlocked, locked again. The door refused. A whisper now, clearer, insistent. "Stay, stay, stay." I swallowed. My pulse screamed in my ears. The lights flickered violently. The shadows stretched across the walls, pooling into corners where nothing should have been. I noticed the boxes weren't arranged the same as before. Some seemed older, warped, stacked in impossible angles, forming corridors of darkness that shouldn't exist. I stumbled backward, tripping over a loose box. My flashlight clattered to the floor, flickering. In that brief light, I saw it. Figure or many. Faces pressed against the inside of boxes, eyes open, staring. Not fully formed, not human. features blurred and warped as though seen through water. They weren't moving, but the weight of their attention bore down on me. I screamed, and the shadows recoiled slightly. Then the footsteps resumed, only now there were more. Pacing closer, around me, circling. The whispers rose in volume, overlapping, repeating, chanting in voices not entirely alive. I tried to run to the counter, to the door, but the store seemed wrong. The walls stretched, corridors lengthened. Every step I took forward brought me closer to the center of the stockroom, to a spot I didn't recognize, though it should have been familiar. I tripped again. My hands found the floor. My fingers brushed a slick surface. Not tile. Something alive, pulsing faintly. The smell hit me then. Metal, rust, decay. Something had been here long before me. Watching, waiting, learning. And then I saw it. The corner where the footsteps had come from, the origin. The stockroom was deeper than I'd ever known. The shelves receded into infinite darkness, folding in on themselves. And in that fold something stirred. Not fully out of shadow, but its presence pressed against the walls, the ceiling, the very air. It was aware of me, watching me, learning me. I realized with a cold, creeping certainty that the stockroom had never been contained. That the door, the lock, the walls, they were just boundaries I accepted. The entity inside didn't need them. It had always been here, coiled around the edges of perception, waiting for a mind awake enough to notice. I tried to scream again. The door swung open on its own, unhinged by something unseen. The fluorescent lights flickered violently, then stabilized, bright and ordinary. The whispers vanished. The shadows receded. The store looked normal, empty, safe. I backed out slowly, pressed my hand to the doorframe, and didn't look back. The night air hit my face, crisp and mundane. My pulse slowed, and the world seemed to breathe with me. I told myself it was over. I told myself it was fatigue, stress, hallucination. But even as I walked to my car, headlights glinting off the wet pavement, I could feel it. The stockroom watching, waiting, not just confined to the walls anymore. It had slipped through the cracks of my perception, trailing me now, patient and deliberate. And I knew, deep down, that the next night shift would find me back inside, the door locking behind me, the footsteps beginning again. Because the stockroom doesn't release what it observes. And now it had observed me. A customer's reflection in the freezer door didn't match their movements. It was past midnight, and the store hummed with the low, constant drone of fluorescent lights and refrigeration units. I was stocking the frozen aisle, the scent of cold metal and plastic wrap mingling with the faint sweetness of lingering soda fumes. The place was quiet, as it usually was this late, but tonight the quiet felt different, heavier, patient, like the air itself was listening. That's when I noticed her. A woman wandered into the aisle, bundled in a dark coat, her face shadowed by the hood. I didn't hear the bell above the door. The quiet was too thick. She paused in front of the freezer doors, fingers brushing the handle lightly. I glanced up from the frozen vegetables I was arranging, and something made me stop. Her reflection didn't match her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the dim lighting, maybe a flicker in the fluorescent tube above, or the angle of the freezer glass. But her reflection moved slower than she did, a fraction of a second lag behind each gesture. When she tilted her head, the reflection hesitated. When she raised her hand, it rose too, but not in time, not in sync. And when she turned to look at me, her reflection lingered for a heartbeat, staring long after her face had moved away. I blinked. Maybe I was tired. Long hours, late nights, stocking shelves alone. It could be stress. I shook my head, trying to refocus on my work. But the reflection didn't obey. I noticed it first in the subtle ways. Her coat sleeve swinging slightly differently, the tilt of her head not quite the same, her gaze fixed in a way she hadn't intended. A small, almost imperceptible smile, one she hadn't worn, curved on the mirrored surface. My stomach tightened. Something about the way the glass held her there. It felt alive. A presence, patient and deliberate, observing. "Excuse me," I said, forcing my voice steady. Can I help you find something? The woman glanced at me, head nodding faintly. Her eyes were dark pools, unreadable. But the reflection tilted its head further, almost cocked, like it was amused at me. I swallowed. Heat prickled at my neck. I told myself it was my imagination, my brain inventing wrongness after too many solitary hours. I tried to look away, focusing on the neat rows of frozen vegetables. When I glanced back, the reflection had moved slightly closer to the glass than she had, fingers brushing an invisible surface in the air in front of it. I froze. The woman's hand was still on the handle, her coat sleeve barely twitching, but her reflection's fingers flexed in ways that made no sense. I stepped back, heart hammering. The fluorescent hum seemed to dip, falter, like the lights themselves were holding their breath. A low hiss slipped from the refrigeration unit. Not mechanical, not entirely. Somewhere beneath the whir, I thought I heard a voice, faint and deliberate, like the glass was whispering my name. I glanced around. The aisle was empty except for us. The rest of the store lay in its normal glow, shelves aligned, products in place. I took a cautious step closer, hand brushing my own reflection on the freezer. The woman watched me, ordinary and still. The reflection didn't. It mirrored me, yes, but with a subtle delay, and every subtle twitch exaggerated, every blink stretched too long. Something in me snapped. I shook my head violently. Tiredness, hallucination, that had to be it. I leaned closer to the glass, trying to catch a pattern, a rational explanation. The reflection mimicked me, but not me. Something beyond me, beyond her. Watching, learning. I took a step back, knocking over a package of frozen peas. The soft thud echoed off the linoleum, and the reflection froze perfectly still, staring at me as though it had been waiting for the sound. My pulse jumped. I could feel a weight pressing at the back of my skull, as though the reflection had extended beyond the glass, reaching into the very air around me. "Sir, are you okay?" The woman said, her voice light, human. I spun. She was ordinary, safe, but the reflection remained, moving independently. It smiled, slow, deliberate, turning toward me even as she turned toward the next aisle. I staggered backward, nearly tripping over a stray box. My breath came fast, shallow. I told myself to leave, to step away, but curiosity and fear pushed me forward. I leaned closer to the glass. That's when I saw it. In the mirrored surface, beyond her reflection, a faint network of dark shapes, thin lines curling in impossible angles behind the figure, shadows that shouldn't exist in the aisle, fingers reaching through, brushing the glass from behind the reflection. It wasn't her. It wasn't me. It was something else. The freezer door rattled. Softly. Not from the woman, not from me. I flinched. The glass shimmered, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw a second pair of eyes staring from behind the reflection. Hungry, patient, old. I stumbled back. The woman was gone. Just gone. As if she had walked through the aisle without sound, without trace. And yet the reflection remained. Perfect copy, alone, moving independently now. It didn't mirror her because she was gone. It mirrored something else, something learning, something hungry. I told myself I was insane. The clock on the wall read past 1. I pinched myself. Pain was real. My breathing was real. The reflection's smile widened. Not the woman's, not mine. I backed away, tripping over a stray crate. My flashlight clattered to the floor. In its light, I could see the reflection step slightly forward, stepping through the glass, edges rippling as though the surface were water. The frozen food behind it warped, bending inward toward the figure. The lights flickered violently. The hum of the refrigeration units deepened, a low, vibrating resonance that rattled my teeth. I ran toward the door, not daring to look back. When I glanced once over my shoulder, the reflection was gone. The freezer stood ordinary, mundane, the cold air drifting from it like nothing had happened. My chest heaved, sweat prickling my hairline. I didn't stop to leave immediately. I looked again, and in the glass, faint but undeniable. I saw myself standing behind me, my own reflection smiling. Not me, not exactly, and I could feel it now. Following me, patient, persistent, learning how I moved, learning how I thought. The store was silent, fluorescent humming normally. The aisle was empty, but the reflection was no longer confined to glass.